Hello, my wonderful kiddos. Here is your December 14th and 15th mini lesson. In case you're not able to make it to class or you just want to watch it a little bit earlier, why not, right? All right, so today we're going to go over a few things in our mini lesson. The first thing we're going to start with is we're going to re-examine the systemic discrimination outline. So all these Google slides are available to you. So let's click on that and let's look at the outline together. So here's the outline. Okay. So remember we talked about when I first presented this outline that there are sentence stems, there are sentence starters under each bullet point of the paper. You should be utilizing those when we start engaging with writing the paper, which will begin right after winter recess. Okay. So in our introduction, we're going to describe discrimination. We're going to say, how does it become systemic? So how does it become a larger or more widespread issue? And then you are going to introduce what form of discrimination that you chose to research and where you chose to focus in on. Remember, I said that we need to choose a focus area because if we just say racial discrimination, that's a huge topic, right? People have written 500-page novels about that, even more than that, right? So we want to make sure that we're kind of condensing our search. We want to make sure that we focus and we want to focus in on a specific system that we're looking at. Remember, systemic discrimination means that it's happening in a system. Is the system that you're talking about a workplace system? Is it politics? Is it schools? Those are just some examples. You can definitely come up with one on your own, but it does have to be some kind of system that you're examining. You have to know that before you're diving into the research, right? So we are working on research still at this point of the video. So you do want to make sure that you kind of solidified in your mind what system are you focusing on where that systemic discrimination is happening. All right, let's talk about body paragraph 1 because this is kind of where we're going to live in our research today. So body paragraph 1, the writing purpose is to inform and explain. And we're going to talk about that a little more in the next part of this mini lesson. But we know just by looking at this that we have first quote, second quote, and third quote for support. That means we definitely need a minimum of 3 sources. For our purposes of researching, we're going to find 4. Why are we doing that, miss, if we only need 3 for our paper? Well, because you always want to have a backup support because you might start to write with one and say, that's not really proving what I wanted to prove. And then you have that already in your toolkit to go to and say, hey, I already have that backup piece of support. Why not use that instead? So we are going to find at least 4 sources about our form of systemic discrimination that will help us to inform and explain about it. Once we scroll down to body paragraph 2, we're not going to engage with this in terms of writing right now, but you know I like to have that roadmap. We have to know where we're going and how we're going to get there. Body paragraph 2, we're going to take whatever problems that we posed in body paragraph 1, where we said, this is a problem, right? We need to pay attention to this. And then in body paragraph 2, we're going to start proposing solutions. Remember, I said that the solutions can be out of that beautiful brain of yours, something that you've thought up, or you can also start referring back to things that other people have tried, other organizations have tried. So maybe your research might take you into diving into that as well. So you want to also keep that in mind because if you're thinking to yourself, Miss, my brain is fried, I just don't know what we could do to solve this problem, right? Then you want to engage in that in the research. You want to be able to find a solution. Oh, look at me, already messing up. That's okay. That's part of life, right? So our second body paragraph, like I said, was to propose a solution. Now our third body paragraph, we're going to weave in another writing purpose. That one's going to be to take a stand. This is where you're going to say, why should people care about fighting against this form of systemic discrimination? And what should they do? How can they do it? How can one person stand up to fight against a systemic wide problem, right? That's causing some form of discrimination. So that's our outline. Let's hop back to the Google slides really quickly. And let's talk about inform and explain writing, informative and explanatory writing. So when we inform someone about something, we're just basically giving them the information, right? We're saying, here it is, here's the information. That's what we're going to dig out from the research that we're doing. So as we're researching, we're looking for those facts, we're looking for those statistics, we're looking for those definite examples of how that discrimination has occurred, right? And you are going to give your audience that information. That's part of informative writing. When we talk about explanatory writing, you hear that word explain in it. When you ask someone to explain something to you, they're going into more detail, right? They're kind of picking it apart and they're saying, well, this is step 1 and this is step 2 and this is step 3, as opposed to just saying, this is what you have to do, which would be informative. So you have to give the information first with the informative writing. And then when you go into the explanatory writing, you're explaining, you're providing insight into it. You're looking at it in a more detailed way. So think of it as you're providing the facts and statistics from the quotes, but then you yourself as the writer, you're digging more deeply into it and saying, how does that show that that's systemic discrimination? How do we understand that that means that a problem is system wide? All right, our next slide. This is not a bad word, I promise. But there's the CRAP method to evaluating sources. CRAP stands for, it's an acronym. An acronym means that the letters in the first part of the word will spell something out or stand for something. So, CRAP, C, currency, R, relevance, A, authority, A, accuracy, P, purpose. See, it's not a bad word because it's spelled differently. So, currency, when something is current, that means how reliable is the information? Is it applicable? Can it apply to whatever you're researching? That does not mean that it needs to be written in 2020. Because if you are writing specifically about the civil rights movement that happened in the 50s, 60s, right? Then the articles or the research that you're doing might be more geared towards that were something that was written toward that time period, right? So the currency is how well can it relate to the time period that you're examining? That does not mean also that if you were writing something about the 1800s that you can't use articles that are written in 2019, right? But you just have to consider it. How current is the article? How far removed is it from the actual source itself? Right? So if we were writing about the 1800s and we are looking at an article about the from 2019, we have to take that into consideration. It's like a big game of telephone, right? Those authors from 2019 definitely weren't alive in the 1800s, and we know that. That doesn't mean that we can't use it. We just want to also look at what sources did they use? Where did they get their information from? Right? Because it's not firsthand knowledge. So currency just means how current or relevant is the information. That brings me to R, relevance. How relevant is the information? If you are writing about systemic discrimination of racial discrimination in the workplace, and then you find an article about racial discrimination in the armed forces, in the military, how relevant is that to what you're trying to prove? It's not that it's a bad article. It's not that it's not on topic, right, about racial discrimination, but how relevant is it? How well can you work it into what your purpose is for writing your paper? So you always have to look at the relevance, how well it fits in with what your purpose is and what your focus is. Authority. Authority means when we think of authority, we think of someone having power, right? When we talk about authority in writing, how do we know that these people know what they're talking about, right? We want to examine that. And you want to make sure that you're checking out those authors. Once you get to the title and the author, you should be doing a separate search on the author themselves. Are they credible? Can we trust them? What kind of authority do they have to give us this information? Accuracy. How well developed was their own research? How do we know it's accurate? How do we know it's trustworthy? Honestly, I know it sounds silly, but you have to do research on your research. When you get to those articles and they cite other sources, check those sources out. See how accurate it is. We all know, especially in the times that we're living in, sometimes the media can be biased, right? Sometimes they're not giving the true facts. So you want to make sure that you're checking out how accurate or true that information is. Purpose, P. You want to make sure that you understand the author's purpose, which was a reading skill of this unit. We talked about a few times that the purpose of writing about President Trump, for instance, will be different from a Democratic perspective versus a Republican perspective. That purpose would be different. So the information might be a little bit different and a little bit skewed. So you want to make sure that as you're going into this research, you're examining, what is the author's purpose here? Are they just giving information? Do they have some kind of slight bias? And again, it doesn't mean that you can't use it. It's just something to keep in mind as you're researching. So I do want you to watch this video that's right here. I'm not going to play it in this video itself because a video in a video, sometimes the audio doesn't work quite well. But this is available in the Google slide, and I'm going to put a link to it as well for the day in the chat if you are live in class with me. And then down here, there's another document that, let's click on it, will bring you to a more detailed explanation of the CRAP method, right? So questions that you can ask yourself when you're evaluating sources. So for instance, currency, we talked about the timeliness, right? You can ask yourself, when was it published or posted? Has it been revised or updated? Is it at a date for your topic? Are the links functional? If the links aren't functional on a website, guys, they haven't updated it in a while. That might be a red flag. Relevance. We can ask ourselves the following because we're looking for the importance of the information for our needs. Remember, it doesn't mean that it's not important information, but does it fulfill our needs for the essay that we're writing? Does the information relate to your topic or answer the question? Who's the intended audience? Is the information at an appropriate level? Have you looked at a variety of sources before determining this is one you will use? Would you be comfortable using this source for a research paper? Then we go down to authority. This is, again, the power behind the information, right? Where's it coming from? Who's the author, publisher, source, sponsor? Are the author's credentials or organizational affiliations given? What are the author's credentials or organizational affiliations? So credentials or organizational affiliations means who backs them, right? Like, who's their people? Who's putting this out for them? What are the author's qualifications to write on the topic? So how are they qualified? How do we know that they can give us this information? Is there contact information such as a publisher or email address? If you can't contact anyone about information, why are they trying to be anonymous, right? You have to think about that. Does the URL reveal anything about the author or source? So here are some examples. .com means commercial. That means someone bought the website. Anybody can buy a website. .edu is an educational website, and .gov is a governmental website. .org is from an organization, or .net is from a network, which is a group of organizations. Okay. Again, not saying that you can't use a .com, but if you are using a .com, you do want to be doing a little bit more research because, as I said, anyone could buy a .com. Accuracy. These are the questions you want to ask for accuracy. Where does the information come from? Is the information supported by evidence? Has it been reviewed, right? Can you verify the information? Does the language or tone seem biased and free of emotion? We talked about those connotative words, right? What kind of emotion are they trying to evoke here? Are there spelling, grammar, or other typographical errors? Oh my goodness, I can't tell you what the source is with the errors. If they have errors, be careful. Nobody was editing it. Last but not least is purpose, the reason the information exists, right? Why the author's putting this out. What's the purpose? What are they trying to do? Do the author's sponsors make their intentions or purpose clear? Is it fact, opinion, or propaganda? Does the point of view appear objective and impartial? Are there political, ideological, cultural, religious, institutional, or personal biases? So why is that author giving or organization giving that information? So this is something just to have handy. Again, I will post this link as well with the Google Slides for the day. But that's our mini lesson for today. Oops, it's going to play. We don't want it to play.
If you want to succeed.
Oh my goodness, I have to move myself. Here we go. So what you're going to do today is you're going to watch the modeling video that I'm about to post about evaluating sources and looking for information on systemic discrimination, and you're going to use the note-taking sheet. Once you get into your independent practice, note-taking sheet number 1 is available to you, and you are researching your chosen form of systemic discrimination. Remember, you want to not only have your form of systemic discrimination chosen, but you want to have a focus area. What system specifically are you looking at? And your exit slip for the day. Why is it important to begin this essay by informing your audience and explaining the information that you're providing? Next class for Asynchronous Wednesday, kiddos, you're going to do another note-taking sheet, finding more information using these same skills. And then on Thursday and Friday, when we're all back together again, we're going to continue our research using note-taking sheet number 2, doing the same thing, because we're using these next 2 classes as well as next week to finish up our research so that when we get back from winter recess, we're all set to start writing our papers. Have a great day. Let me know if you have any questions.